The year was 1692, and the crisp, cold winds sweeping through the isolated, devout communities of colonial Massachusetts carried a chilling secret. Within the small, God-fearing village of Salem, the true monsters weren't lurking in the dark, ancient woods surrounding them, but were festering unseen within the very hearts and minds of humanity itself. This was a community rooted deeply in Puritan faith, its inhabitants believing in a constant battle between good and evil, a belief that paradoxically destined them for a brutal, self-inflicted reckoning. What began as mere whispers of unseen forces, of dark magic at play, would soon unleash an unstoppable, terrifying tide of accusation, suspicion, and agonizing death, proving with horrifying clarity that fear is the most merciless executioner of all. It was a silent, insidious terror, one that would turn neighbor against neighbor and transform an entire colony into a living nightmare. The first ominous signs were subtle, yet deeply unsettling, emerging from the parsonage home of Reverend Samuel Parris. His 9-year-old daughter Betty and her young cousin, 12-year-old Abigail Williams, began to display bizarre, alarming behaviors. Their bodies would contort into impossible, unnatural shapes. They would shriek uncontrollably, uttering guttural sounds, and fall into sudden, violent fits. They complained of unseen tormentors claiming to be pricked with pins, bitten and choked by invisible hands. Dr. William Griggs, the local physician, was summoned. After examining the girls and finding no physical ailment, his diagnosis was chillingly definitive. The girls were under an evil hand. They were bewitched. The air in Salem, already tense with religious fervor and apprehension of the unknown, suddenly thickened with a palpable dread, for this was a direct assault by the devil himself, or so they believed. Under relentless pressure from the community and their magistrates, the afflicted girls were pushed to name their tormentors. The finger of accusation, once reluctantly pointed, ignited a wildfire that consumed the entire colony with devastating speed. The first to be named were the most vulnerable, the marginalized. Tituba, Reverend Parris's enslaved woman from Barbados, whose exotic background made her an easy target. Sarah Good, an impoverished beggar notorious for her pipe smoking and muttering. And Sarah Osborne, an elderly, unpopular woman who had rarely attended church. These initial accusations seemed contained, targeting society's outcasts, yet what followed was a terrifying leap as the accusations mercilessly spread, ensnaring even highly respected members of the community. Imagine the profound shock as figures like Rebecca Nurse, an elderly, frail woman known for her deep piety, her good standing, and her long-respected reputation, suddenly found herself targeted by the very girls whose inexplicable fits had started this horrifying ordeal. Her accusation, unthinkable just weeks before, sent deep tremors through Salem, brutally confirming to everyone that no one, regardless of their virtue, wealth, or social position, was truly safe from the escalating terror that had now begun to consume their world. This was no ordinary legal battle seeking truth and justice. It was a perversion of law, where the very bedrock of justice crumbled under the crushing weight of collective fear. The most insidious weapon unleashed within the courtroom was spectral evidence, testimony based entirely on intangible claims, dreams, visions, or the accuser's dramatic assertions that the accused spirit was tormenting them. Think of the chilling, inescapable implication this held. You could be accused because someone claimed to see your specter pinching them, or hear your disembodied spirit whispering temptations in their ear, even if you were miles away, visibly present elsewhere, or sound asleep in your own bed. This meant there was absolutely no verifiable defense, no alibi that could possibly save you. Your tangible physical presence counted for nothing against the invisible torment of a spectral witch. Your very innocence, if you dared to assert it, became a profound liability, as denying the accusations was twisted into defying the court's authority, and by extension, defying God's will. Confession, no matter how false, became the twisted path to salvation, a desperate gamble to survive a system built on terror. The air in Salem became thick with a palpable, suffocating suspicion. Neighbors who had shared meals, attended church together, and celebrated life's milestones now eyed each other with raw fear, their trust eroding with every new, baseless accusation. Children manipulated or genuinely afflicted accused parents. Servants, perhaps out of malice or coercion, accused masters. Public examinations intended to ascertain truth transformed into disturbing theatrical spectacles. In these packed, feverish gatherings, the afflicted girls would scream, writhe, contort their bodies, and fall into terrifying fits, supposedly at the mere glance or gesture of the accused. These dramatic, often manipulative performances, frequently encouraged and validated by the magistrates themselves, held immense, horrifying sway over a terrified public desperate for immediate answers. The accused, trapped in this nightmarish theater, faced relentless pressure to confess, their tormentors believing a confession was the only path to salvation, even if it was an outright lie born of desperation. Many endured unimaginably harsh conditions in freezing jails, often starved, deprived of sleep, and held in their own filth, a silent, brutal form of psychological and physical torture designed to break their will and extract a confession, thereby feeding the growing, monstrous appetite of the trials. This wasn't justice. It was a desperate, self-perpetuating cycle of fear, where the lines between reality and delusion blurred, transforming a once quiet, pious village into a brutal arena where the very concept of truth had vanished entirely. Once formally accused, the nightmare truly began for those unfortunate souls. Stepping into the makeshift courtroom, the accused were not met with a fair trial, but a terrifying theatrical spectacle designed with one purpose: to utterly break their spirit and extract a confession. They were immediately presumed guilty, stripped of their fundamental rights, and the legal process was meticulously rigged against them from the outset. Accused individuals were rarely afforded proper legal counsel, leaving them isolated and defenseless against the relentless prosecution. Interrogations often stretched for grueling hours, sometimes days, relentless and exhausting, filled with cunningly leading questions, psychological traps, and an intimidating atmosphere that wore down even the most resilient individuals. To deny guilt, even if undeniably innocent, was twisted into an act of blatant defiance against God and the court, a sign of their continued allegiance to the devil, which only served to strengthen the already overwhelming suspicion against them. Confession, however utterly false, became the only desperate glimmer of hope, a twisted path to escape the gallows by admitting to a sin they hadn't committed, and then, crucially, naming others to further fuel the accusations. Many, exhausted, terrified, and utterly desperate, chose this horrific path, inadvertently sealing the fates of their friends and neighbors. This harrowing descent into Salem's past truly exposes the darker side of human history. If you're finding yourself gripped by these chilling revelations, please take a moment to like this video. It helps us immensely and ensures we can continue to uncover more of history's most compelling and unsettling tales for you. Beyond the public spectacle of the courtroom, the conditions of imprisonment inflicted a slow, agonizing torment that few could endure without profound psychological and physical breakdown. Jails were notoriously unheated, even during the brutal, bitter New England winters, leaving prisoners shivering constantly, vulnerable to hypothermia and rampant disease. Food was scarce, often putrid, and barely enough to sustain life, leading to severe starvation and debilitating weakness. Sanitation was utterly non-existent. Prisoners were forced to live in their own filth, enduring the unbearable stench of human waste and the constant threat of infection that gnawed relentlessly at their bodies, leading to festering sores and agonizing illnesses. This was far more than mere detention. It was a calculated physical and mental breakdown, deliberately designed to grind down every last shred of resistance and force confessions. Every single hour spent in those dark, freezing, disease-ridden cells was a prolonged, inhumane form of torture, relentlessly chipping away at their sanity, their will to live, and their very humanity. The lines between their waking nightmare and terrifying dreams blurred into an unbearable reality. Among the most harrowing and enduring examples of this systemic brutality was the fate of Giles Corey, an 80-year-old farmer whose defiance in the face of such overwhelming odds became legendary. Accused of witchcraft, Corey, with a clear and defiant mind, understood the corrupt and inescapable nature of the trials. He bravely and strategically refused to enter a plea, neither guilty nor innocent, a legal maneuver known as standing mute. By doing so, he aimed to prevent his property from being confiscated by the state, hoping to preserve it for his heirs. To compel a plea, the court resorted to an archaic and utterly barbaric form of torture known as peine forte et dure, a brutal process of pressing. Corey was stripped naked, laid upon the cold, hard ground of the open field, and a heavy wooden board was placed directly upon his body. Stones, massive and unforgiving, some weighing hundreds of pounds, were then slowly, one by one, piled onto the board, steadily increasing the crushing pressure upon his chest. For 2 agonizing, unimaginable days, under this immense, suffocating weight that slowly compressed his organs, Giles Corey endured unspeakable pain. Yet with incredible fortitude, he never broke his silence. His only words, reportedly uttered with an unwavering defiance as the weight grew unbearable, were a resolute, chilling more weight. His ultimate silence, his steadfast refusal to validate the corrupt and murderous court, became a powerful, albeit tragic, act of ultimate resistance. His horrific, drawn-out death was a stark, brutal testament to the extreme lengths the court would go, not to genuinely seek truth or justice, but to ruthlessly enforce its twisted, fear-driven version of legal and moral order. The peak of madness arrived with a relentless, terrifying speed, and the executions that followed marked the darkest period of Salem's hysteria. The initial trickle of accusations had swollen into a raging torrent, sweeping up not only society's outcasts, but also deeply respected members of the community, even a former minister. The fear was a living, breathing entity, feeding voraciously on itself, transforming the very legal system into a chilling conveyor belt to the gallows. Consider the tragic and infuriating case of Bridget Bishop, a feisty, independent woman who ran a local tavern. She was the first to be brought to trial and condemned in June 1692. Her crimes were ludicrously flimsy, including accusations of wearing a red bodice, a sign of vanity in the Puritanical society, and allowing supposedly rowdy late-night gatherings. Witnesses, caught in the grip of the shared delusion, claimed her specter attacked them. One even testified under oath that she looked at a cart, and it immediately became stuck in the mud as if by malevolent will. Such absurd, utterly unproven accusations were enough to seal her grim fate, and she was the first innocent soul to hang on what would become chillingly known as Gallows Hill. Her public execution sent a clear, chilling message reverberating throughout the colony. No one was truly safe, and no accusation, no matter how outlandish, was too unbelievable to be accepted as truth. The absurdity of the proceedings only deepened with each passing week, pushing the boundaries of human credulity to their breaking point. Accusations, once aimed at adults, were now made against children as young as 4 years old, and in some truly bizarre instances, even against animals. The courts, blinded by fear and their own twisted interpretations of divine judgment, readily accepted visions of spectral cats and demonic familiars as ironclad proof of a person's pact with the devil.